They told us we were too late, that the enemy was already embedded in the Orion sectors, tightening their grip on civilian routes and slaughtering resistance cells like vermin. Every broadcast we intercepted from the outer rim screamed one thing: surrender or vanish. But humanity never learned to surrender. The fleet didn't launch with hope. It launched with silence, grim, calculated, weaponized silence. No speeches, no banners, just orders. Engines burned white as we exited Earth's orbit, 139 ships in formation, led by a flagship carved like a blade out of black titanium, wrapped in layers of railguns, nuclear cores, and vengeance. I sat in Command Module 4A of the dreadnought Obsidian Hammer, my pulse syncing with the deep hum of the ship's reactor. My name's Wren. Formerly Commander Wren Maddox, now demoted to combat strategist after what they called a disciplinary complication. Translation: I disobeyed a direct order to save 173 colonists from a Crixian bombing zone. I did what I had to do, and the brass hated that I made them look like cowards. But now, when the galaxy was burning, they needed killers who didn't flinch. The Obsidian Hammer wasn't a place for idealists. It was built for men like me, flawed, cold, tactical. The ones who watched enemies die through monitors without blinking. The ones who calculated kill ratios and called them justice. I stood by the main war table as the fleet broke warp into the Andros war zone, an asteroid-choked corridor between Earth's last military outpost and Crixian-occupied space. The moment we arrived, the silence shattered. Multiple enemy pings. 23 Crixian war beasts moving to intercept, reported Lieutenant Keener, his voice shaking. They didn't expect us this soon, I muttered. Activate phase breakers. No warnings. No mercy. Keener hesitated. Sir, civilians, maybe. Execute. He pressed the panel. Across the void, our front-line carriers unleashed the phase breakers, gravity-splitting torpedoes that didn't explode. They folded space into daggers. Anything within a kilometer turned inside out. The Crixian beasts never had time to pivot. Half of them vanished in seconds, their hulls crushed by the very vacuum they ruled. The rest broke formation, confused, frantic. That's when we sent the fracture units. One by one, our smaller ships darted through debris fields, latching onto Crixian hulls and drilling inside like parasites. The war table lit up with red flashes, enemy life signs going dark. I didn't celebrate. None of us did. This wasn't a victory. This was a warning. For years, humanity was mocked. Other species called us unstable, emotional, short-lived. They said we were too fractured to ever build an empire. And maybe they were right. But that fracture? It's what made us dangerous. No one fights like the broken do. A chime echoed through the command module. I turned. General Ashran's face filled the holofeed, older, colder, and as merciless as the ship itself. You disobeyed a direct ceasefire clause in Protocol 9, he growled. The ceasefire wasn't in effect until we broadcast it. We never did, I replied flatly. There were diplomatic observers in the region. Then they got a real show. Ashran's jaw tensed. You just lit the spark of a full-scale war. I leaned forward. No, General. The war already started. We just stopped pretending it hadn't. I cut the transmission and turned back to the table. The last Crixian vessel blinked off the scanner. Silence again. And just like that, the first blow had landed. Not with honor, not with strategy, but with pure, calculated fury. And I wasn't done. When the last Crixian ship blinked off the scanners, the silence in the command module felt wrong. Not peaceful, heavy, the kind of silence that comes after you hit someone so hard you wonder if you broke something inside them. I didn't look up from the war table. I didn't need to. I could feel the eyes on me. Keener, Ramirez, Lynn, the rest of the bridge crew. They didn't know what came next. Hell, neither did I. But I sure as hell wasn't going to wait around for a reprimand from General Ashran. The man had buried too many good soldiers under the flag of diplomacy. "Run full system sweeps," I ordered. "I want every heat signature within 100 clicks. If something so much as blinks out there, I want to know what color its blood is." Keener nodded, moving quickly. The others followed. They were scared, and I didn't blame them. They'd just witnessed one of the fastest tactical massacres in human war history. No speeches, no drawn-out firefights, just cold execution. And they knew the brass wasn't going to let that slide. Especially not when I was the one pulling the trigger. I stepped out of the command module, made my way down the steel corridors of the Obsidian Hammer, passing soldiers, engineers, med techs. Nobody met my eyes. Nobody saluted. That was fine. Respect didn't mean anything if it came out of fear. I wasn't here for medals or speeches. I was here because someone had to be the monster that scared the monsters. I reached the lower deck, walked through the blast door into Bay 9, the observation chamber where we kept logs of enemy encounters. I needed to review the Crixian engagement, not for strategy, not for records, for truth. Something was wrong. The Crixians weren't ready, that much was obvious, but they also didn't retreat like they normally would. They didn't call for reinforcements. That wasn't like them. They weren't ambushed. They were abandoned. I loaded the battle logs, audio and heat sigs syncing across the holo display. The data flickered, movement patterns, ship maneuvers, energy spikes. I zoomed into the comms band frequencies during the first attack. There, a Crixian broadcast, short, static warped. But it wasn't a distress call. It was a question. "Why are they firing? We were told they wouldn't attack. The humans agreed to the ceasefire." My stomach turned. I replayed it. Again and again. They weren't just unprepared. They thought they were safe. Someone told them we wouldn't shoot. Someone from our side. I stood there, fists clenched. The rage started low in my chest, like a quiet burn, then rose fast and sharp. Ashran. He had sent us in under Black Ops protocol, full kill authority, no oversight, no comms allowed, and at the same time, he'd been feeding the Crixians lies. Why? Why set us up to slaughter an unprepared force during a supposed ceasefire, unless he wanted this war to explode? Unless he needed someone to blame. And I'd just handed him the perfect excuse. I stormed out of Bay 9, boots echoing through the metal halls, making my way straight to the communications sector. The tech on duty tried to block me. Regulations, encryption locks, authorization levels. I didn't argue. I just punched him. Quick, clean. He dropped. I keyed in my old override code, bypassed the admin firewalls. I knew they'd wipe this hole clean once they realized what I knew. I pulled everything, outgoing transmissions from high command, Ashran's personal messages, encryption keys. I wasn't a hacker, but I was military. Old military, when you had to know how to bypass tech in the field. And what I found? It made my blood go cold. Ashran had been in contact with a Crixian ambassador 3 weeks prior. The transcripts were coded. But I knew how to read between the lines. He wasn't negotiating peace. He was staging a setup, feeding the enemy false information about human withdrawal from the Andros sector. Assuring them it was safe to regroup there, he lured them in, and then sent me to kill them, which meant he wanted the slaughter. He wanted this war to burn. And now he had a rogue commander, me, to pin it on. I downloaded the logs into my private drive, sealed them under a triple encrypted shell. I couldn't send them now, not without exposing myself. But I'd find a way. Not yet. But soon. When I turned to leave, a shadow stepped into the room. Sergeant Bran, Security Division, Ashran's lapdog. "Commander," he said, voice low, "step away from the console." I didn't move. "You here to arrest me?" He smiled. No. Just here to clean up a mess. He pulled his weapon. Low-cal plasma, quiet, discreet. I dove left. The blast scorched the wall. I rolled behind the console, grabbed the emergency panel wrench and threw it hard. It cracked his wrist. He yelped, fired wild. I rushed him, slammed my shoulder into his gut, drove him into the wall. His head hit the metal with a satisfying crack. He slid down, blood pooling under his ear. Still breathing, but not for long. I stared at him. Not with guilt, with focus. Ashran wasn't just willing to start a war. He was willing to kill his own to cover it up. I knew then I was already marked. There was no going back. By the time I returned to the command module, I was different. Not just angry, resolved, cold. I'd always walked the edge of the line, but now I was ready to cut it in half. Keener looked up, eyes wide. "Sir, you okay?" "No," I said. "Not even close, we're changing course." He blinked. "But the General—" "Override the jump path. We're heading to Outpost 7A. He hesitated. "That's off limits. Last I checked, it's been blacklisted. Full lockdown." "Exactly," I said. "And you'll follow that order, or you can explain to your family why you backed a genocide." His face drained. He obeyed. I sat in the command chair and stared at the stars. Outpost 7A was a relic of the early wars. A dead base, off-grid, hidden behind radiation storms and debris fields. But it had one thing Ashran couldn't touch: independent relay comms. If I could reach it, I could blast the truth across every channel in the sector, every colony, every resistance group, every damn planet with an antenna would hear what Ashran did. And when they heard it, when they saw it, he'd burn. But getting there meant staying ahead of him. I tapped into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Commander Wren Maddox. Effective immediately, the Obsidian Hammer is operating under Protocol 7, Emergency Autonomy. Any ship that attempts to intercept will be considered hostile. We are not traitors. We are not rebels. We are truth-bearers. If you believe in the soul of this species, follow us. If you don't," I paused, "then get the hell out of our way." Keener stared at me. "You just declared war on high command." I shook my head. "No, I just told them I'm not their weapon anymore." The ship jumped. The stars warped. And behind us, I knew Ashran was already preparing a kill order. This wasn't going to be a clean war. No battle lines, no enemy colors, just shadows. Humans hunting humans, loyalty twisting into knives. The real war had begun, and it was going to be bloody. We dropped out of hyperspace 12 clicks short of Outpost 7A, right into a dense belt of irradiated debris that looked like it had once been a mining colony. That was the point. The outpost had been buried here, tucked inside a graveyard of twisted steel and failed civilizations. Nobody came out this far anymore. Not unless they wanted to disappear. I stood on the bridge, watching as the autoscrubbers tried to compensate for the rad interference. It wasn't perfect. The hull was already groaning under the stress. But it would hold. The Obsidian Hammer was built to break atmospheres and silence rebellions. A little radiation wasn't going to end her. "Distance to relay station?" I asked. Keener, pale and sweating under the pressure, checked the panel. 74 kilometers. "But sir, we're not alone." I stiffened. "Talk." He swallowed. 3 pings just dropped out of warp. Stealth class. Too far out to ID, but they're matching our shadow signature. They're not broadcasting any IFF. Meaning they were black ops. Ashran's personal dogs. He didn't send an armada. He sent assassins. I nodded slowly. "Prep the point defense grid. We're not waiting to get stabbed in the back." Keener hesitated again. "Sir, are we really doing this? Turning our guns on our own people?" I turned to him, calm but deliberate. "No, they turned their guns on us first. We're just finally pointing back. The tension in the room spiked, but I didn't care. They needed to feel it. Fear had its use. It forced men to decide what they really believed in. And right now, belief was all we had. The hammer's internal comm buzzed. "Bridge, this is security, sir. We've got a situation on deck 3. Intruder alert. Unauthorized movement near cryo storage." I didn't wait. I bolted from the command chair and made for the lifts. Cryo storage was restricted, mostly backup supplies and deep frozen med tanks. No reason anyone should be down there unless they were hiding something. Or someone. The lift dropped me straight to the deck. I stepped into the corridor and instantly smelled something wrong. Smoke, plasma residue, gunfire. I drew my sidearm and moved fast, boots silent against the floor. The lights were flickering. Emergency backup only. Someone had cut power. I rounded the corner and saw them. 2 bodies, security officers, both dead. Clean shots to the head, and kneeling over them, not looting. Not panicking, was a woman. Civilian clothes, short-cropped hair, scar under her chin. Her hands were stained with blood, but her eyes weren't afraid. They were focused, cold, trained. She looked up at me, didn't flinch. I raised my weapon. "Who the hell are you?" She stood slowly, raising her hands but not in surrender. She moved like someone used to violence, not reckless, just calculating. "I'm not here to kill you," she said. "But they are. You've got maybe 10 minutes before the black ships breach your hull and put a plasma bolt in your skull." I didn't lower the weapon. "Talk fast." "My name's Ren, former Intel. Project Grayscale." I narrowed my eyes. "That project was shut down." "No," she said. "It was buried." She reached into her coat, slow and deliberate, and pulled out a data shard. Tossed it to me. I caught it. Keeping my aim locked on her. Plugged it into my comm. Files unfolded. Redacted lines. Top-secret clearance, internal memos, coordinates, assassination protocols. One name repeated over and over. Ren Maddox. "Your death was signed off 2 days ago," she said. "High Command doesn't want your version of the truth getting out. The ceasefire lie was only part of it." I stared at the screen. "What's the rest?" "They're planning a false flag strike," she said. "Human vessels painted in Crixian signals. They'll attack Earth's outer colonies, make it look like retaliation for the massacre." I felt the rage like a fist tightening in my chest. To justify a total war. She nodded. "Unlimited resources, martial law, rebuilding the war economy. They'll crown Ashran the savior of the species while he sets the whole damn galaxy on fire." I lowered my weapon slowly, not because I trusted her, but because I needed allies more than I needed corpses. "You want to stop him?" She gave a bitter smile. "If I wanted you dead, I'd have let the real killers finish the job." Fair enough. I keyed my comm. "Keener, breach protocol. We've got enemy agents on board. Lock down all decks. Anyone without command clearance gets detained or shot." The lights shifted red. Sirens blared. My crew didn't ask questions. They didn't have to. They trusted fear more than orders now. Ren followed me back to the bridge. She moved with purpose, scanning every corridor, checking every angle. The kind of paranoia you earn from being hunted too long. We reached the command deck just as the outer sensors flared. "Incoming!" Keener shouted. "They've deployed boarding pods, 6, maybe more." "Seal all airlocks," I ordered. "Activate point defense turrets." The ship rumbled as our automated cannons opened up. Explosions rocked the outer hull. A few pods got shredded mid-flight, but not all. Warning lights flicked on. "Breach on deck 5. Hostiles inside." I turned to Ren. "You ready to fight?" She pulled a compact rail pistol from her belt. "I was born in blood, Commander. Let's see how yours flows." We met the boarding party on Deck 5. Black armor. No insignias. Silent. Efficient. They moved like shadows, clearing hallways with stun rounds and plasma bursts. These weren't just soldiers. They were cleaners. Ren and I moved through the maintenance tunnels, flanking them from behind. I counted 7. Armed with thermal vision and neurodisruptors. No warnings, no negotiations. One of them turned, saw us, raised his rifle. Too slow. Ren dropped him with a shot to the throat. I put a second round in his chest for good measure. The rest spun, but we were already moving. Side corridors, flashbangs, ricochets off the bulkheads. It wasn't a fair fight. It was war. In 6 minutes, all 7 were down. One alive, barely. I knelt beside him, ripped his helmet off. Human. Pale. Early 20s, not a soldier, a recruit. "Who sent you?" I asked. He coughed blood, smiled through it. "You're already dead, Maddox. You just don't know it yet." He bit down. "Poison tooth. Standard for Black Ops." He convulsed and died. I stood, blood on my gloves, and looked at Ren. "They're going to keep coming." She nodded. "Unless we go louder than they ever wanted." We made it to Outpost 7A 4 hours later. The hammer took hull damage. 2 crew were dead, 1 missing, probably vented during the breach. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. This wasn't about orders anymore. This was about truth. And survival. The relay station was still functional. Barely. Covered in dust, leaking power, but alive. We docked manually. Sent a small team inside with Ren and me. The main console was still linked to the sector net. A chance to broadcast. I uploaded the files, the transmissions, the kill orders. Ren added her own logs, Black Ops contracts, witness recordings, names of operatives. Then I looked into the live feed cam. "This is Ren Maddox," I said. "Human Fleet Command. Or at least I used to be." I stared at the lens, eyes dark. "If you're seeing this, you've been lied to." Then I told them everything. No polish, no propaganda. Just the rot under the surface. The truth. And then we hit send. The signal went wide. Every outer colony, every resistance cell, every pirate barge, every sympathetic fleet officer in the system. And once it was out, there was no taking it back. Ashran would see it, and he'd burn everything to stop it. The signal spread like fire. I watched the upload complete. Watched the data packet tear through every relay in the sector. Every colony outpost, trade station, even the black market comms buried deep in asteroid fields. They all lit up. And then, for a moment, nothing. The silence was worse than the war zone. No response, no outcry, no fleets flipping sides, just waiting. Then came the retaliation. It started with the Silver Dagger, a destroyer-class support vessel docked on the edge of Saturn's orbit. Word came in through a scrambled shortwave, exploded from the inside out. A sabotage hit. No survivors. One of our last neutral command hubs. Then the Icarus Fall, a freighter that had been smuggling civvies out of the contested zones. Gone dark. No distress beacon. Nothing. And finally, the Meridian Sky, the only ship we knew for sure had received our broadcast. One of the bridge officers was a friend of mine. Rask, not a loyalist, not a rebel, just a good man who believed in truth. He tried to send a reply. Never finished the message. Only thing that came through was static and screaming. Then it cut. One by one, anyone who'd heard us was being erased. Ashran wasn't going to debate us. He wasn't going to counter the claims. He was going to wipe the galaxy clean of them. I stood in the main deck of Outpost 7A, fingers tight around the edge of the comm console, jaw clenched. My crew moved behind me like ghosts. Nobody knew what came next. We were fugitives now, war criminals in the eyes of high command. And worse, Some of us still believed in the system that was trying to kill us. I saw it in their eyes. The hesitation, the doubt. They weren't all in. Not yet. Ren came up beside me, arms crossed, watching the monitors. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her expression said enough. She'd seen it before, the look in soldiers' eyes when they realized their orders meant nothing. 2 days, she said finally. Maybe 3 before they send the main fleet. I nodded. We won't survive that. No, she agreed. But we might start something that does. Back on the obsidian hammer, paranoia thickened the air like smoke. Trust became a relic. We ran triple clearance sweeps, security checks, full crew re-verification. Anyone with Black Ops ties was flagged, questioned, watched, and still the doubt lingered. That's how it starts. Not with gunfire, with silence, with glances that linger a second too long, with whispered side conversations, with crew eating meals apart from one another, the kind of quiet that feels like a countdown. Keener approached me in the briefing room. He looked tired. More than that. Hollow. You didn't have to go this far, he said, voice low. You saw the data. He shook his head. I saw enough to know something's wrong, but you painted a target on every person aboard this ship. I leaned forward. No. Keener! Ashran did. The moment he weaponized the truth. He paused, swallowing hard. You should have come to high command. I laughed, bitter and sharp. And what? Begged for my life before they staged a shuttle accident? You still think there's a seat at that table for people like us? His silence was answer enough. I stepped past him, but he grabbed my arm. Not rough, just desperate. They're scared, Ren. All of them. Not just of Ashran. Of you. I stopped. That hit harder than anything the enemy had thrown. I pulled away without a word. That night, if you could call it that in deep space, alarms shattered the silence. Internal breach. Deck 7. I reached the corridor in seconds, rail pistol drawn. Ren was already there, standing over a slumped crewman, shot in the side, still breathing. I recognized him. Nav officer. Young, sharp, too sharp. His locker had flagged during the sweeps, but there was no proof. Now we had it. He was holding an encrypted data rod. Still warm. Trying to signal command, Ren said. Bastard almost got it through. I looked down at him. He blinked slowly, face pale, lips trembling. You don't understand, he whispered. They promised us peace. That word, peace, it stuck in my throat. They promised a lie and he believed it. I nodded. Then I turned and walked away. Ren caught up. You're not going to kill him? Not yet. She frowned. He nearly compromised everything. I stopped and looked her dead in the eyes. And that's exactly what they want us to do. Start killing our own. Prove them right. She didn't respond. Just watched me for a moment. Mercy's not going to win you this war, she finally said. No, I agreed, but becoming what I hate won't either. Hours later, we intercepted a transmission. Sloppy, rushed, someone trying to mask their location, badly. It wasn't from high command, it was from a rogue cell, resistance fleet, old Earth hardware patched with alien scrap, a war band of ex-soldiers and mercs. They called themselves the Ashwake. They'd seen the broadcast, and they wanted to talk. I had Keener patch them through on a tight beam line. The hollow lit up with a man's face, scarred, sunburned, missing one eye. He looked like someone who'd crawled out of a burning trench and decided to make the fire his home. You Ren Maddox? He asked. Depends who's asking. I'm the guy who buried 3 good friends because Ashran used them as bait. That was enough. I nodded. Then yeah, I'm him. He grinned. Good. Because if you're lying, I'm gonna jam a nuke up your airlock. Diplomacy at its finest. His name was Narek, ex-captain, court-martialed, blacklisted, now leader of a half-mad fleet of vengeance junkies and exiled patriots. But he had ships, guns, people, and most importantly, rage. We set up a rendezvous point, Cradle 6, a dead moon hidden behind the rings of Virex Prime. We'd dock, exchange intel, and, if neither side killed each other, maybe plan something bigger. I briefed the crew, told them what was coming. Some looked relieved. Some looked like they were waiting for the right moment to mutiny. We jumped 2 days later. Quiet jump, no chatter. Just the stars stretching like ghost trails as we ripped through space toward Cradle 6. The Ashwake fleet was already there, maybe a dozen ships, ugly as hell, bristling with repurposed alien tech and barely stable reactors. But they were alive, and more importantly, they were angry. Narek came aboard with 2 guards, no salutes, no bullshit. Just a glare that said, "If you screw me, I shoot you." I could respect that. We met in the war room, shared files, transmissions, intel, and finally silence. Narek spoke first. "You want to hit them?" "Yes." "You want to cut the head off the beast?" "Clean." He leaned forward. "I've got 1 shot, 1 chance to do real damage before they glass my fleet. I want to know something before I risk everyone under my command." I met his gaze. "Ask." He pointed a thick, scarred finger at me. "Are you doing this for justice or for revenge?" I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. Both answers were true. Both were poison. But only one would save what was left of us. "I'm doing this," I said finally, "because I'm tired of being a knife in someone else's hand." He stared at me for a long time. Then he grinned. "Good answer." Together we made a plan. Not to win. Not yet. But to expose. We'd intercept a high-command refueling hub in the Bellatrix corridor, a relay station Ashran used to coordinate long-range black ops. We'd capture it, broadcast from it, use it to show the galaxy that the rot wasn't isolated. It was systemic. If we hit it hard enough, loud enough, others would start to break rank. That was the hope. Hope. A fragile thing in war. But it was all we had left. Bellatrix Delta 4 hung in space like a rotting wound. A refueling relay buried in the frozen shadows of a dead gas giant. It was never meant to be glamorous. No bright beacons, no banners, just black steel, cold lights, and the quiet hum of exploitation. Ashran's operations pulsed through it like poison in a vein. We planned to bleed it dry. The Ashwake fleet warped in first. 12 ships, all teeth, no polish. Scavenged cruisers and stolen destroyers, rigged with unstable alien plasma cores and duct-taped shield arrays. Beautiful in their madness. Ugly in a way that only survival could shape. The obsidian hammer dropped in second. Clean, lethal, methodical. My crew moved with mechanical precision, but I could feel the fractures deepening. One wrong look, one misstep, and we'd implode from the inside. I stood in the war room beside Ren, overlooking the live feed of the target station. No movement, no external ships, just automated orbital mines and an outdated defensive grid. Simple stuff. Obsolete. Not meant to stop full fleet engagements, but still, too quiet. "This smells wrong," Ren muttered, eyes narrowed. I nodded. Ashran doesn't leave doors this open unless there's something waiting behind them. On cue, the comms crackled. Narek's voice came through, rough and impatient. "We're in position. You ready to knock?" I tapped the console. "Let's make some noise." The attack began with surgical strikes. The Ashwake's forward ships opened up with wide spectrum jammers, scrambling the station's response time. Our gunships followed up, disabling turrets and frying heat sensors. No casualties, no resistance, still quiet. Too quiet. Keener's voice came over the internal line. "We've breached the docking bay. Sending boarding team." I moved to the bridge, watching, waiting. Inside Bellatrix Delta 4, the air was thick with dust and silence. My team, 12 soldiers, hand-picked, swept the station corridor by corridor. What they found wasn't enemy fire. It was absence, no crew, no defense squads, no AI response. The station was a shell. Keener's feed flickered on my screen. He stood in the main control room of the station, surrounded by blank monitors and still running life support systems. Someone had been here. Recently. He knelt beside a smear of blood near a console. "Fresh," he said, "but no bodies." That's when it hit me. "Get out of there," I said, "now." But it was too late. The first explosion tore through the docking bay, not from the outside, but from within the walls. A buried deep-pack. The second blast followed 5 seconds later, under the reactor housing. Then came the real attack, not from the station, from behind us. The stars behind the Ashwake fleet bloomed with fire. Ships dropping out of warp, sleek and black. 30? No, 40. Not civilian, not even standard military. Something worse, pale-born, experimental fleet. No insignias, no call signs. The weapons division of High Command's darkest projects. Ghosts built in secret. Their only mission, erasure. They came with no warning, no hails, no demands, just death. The Ashwake cruisers reacted fast, turning, firing, screaming through their ragged comms. But it wasn't enough. One of them, the Sundagger, took 3 precision strikes to its drive core and split open like an egg, venting bodies and fire into the void. Narek's voice howled across the channel. "Ambush! They knew!" His comm cut. Jammed. We were alone again. "Raise shields," I shouted. "All power to the flak grid. Keener, pull the team out, now!" But he didn't respond. Only static. I stared at the station. It was shaking, coming apart, trapped. My fists clenched against the console. I wanted to go after them, wanted to send in every last rescue craft. But if I did, we'd all die. Ren put a hand on my arm. "They knew the risk. You have to make the call." I looked at her, and made it. Disengage. Pull back to fallback coordinates. Leave the dead. The obsidian hammer turned its back on the station just as it erupted into a second wave of detonations. The fireball stretched wide, painting the hull with searing light. Somewhere in there, Keener died. Along with 10 good men. We warped blind, random vector, encrypted, bouncing off dead relays and ghost signals to mask our path. When we dropped back into normal space, deep in the Kuros drift, I walked off the bridge and didn't speak for 2 hours. Not to Ren, not to my crew, not even to myself. Because some part of me knew this wasn't Ashran outplaying us. It was someone from the inside. Someone had leaked our coordinates. I called a lockdown, full ship quarantine, no one in or out of the command decks. Ren and I went straight to the logs, sensor data, comm packets, warp signatures. We found it buried deep in the navigation history, a micro-ping relay, activated right after we'd chosen the Bellatrix target. It wasn't a signal, it was a breadcrumb, and someone on my bridge had dropped it. Ren scanned the logs. 3 people had access to this data. I knew 2 of them. Loyal, vetted, bleeding for this cause. But the third, Lieutenant Hal Brenner, I should have known. Brenner was the kind of officer who played neutral in every fight, too polished, too patient. He'd never openly challenged me, But he always looked at me like I was temporary, like I was a phase to be endured. I stormed into his quarters with 2 guards. He was gone. Chamber empty, locker open, escape pod missing. He'd run before the attack even started. Coward? No. Smart. Because if I'd caught him, I wouldn't have shot him. I'd have made an example out of him so brutal it would haunt the command decks for years. Ren stepped in behind me. He's gone. Probably with Ashran now. I nodded. Good. Let them all gather in one place. Her voice lowered. You lost a lot of people today, Ren. They're going to start asking why you keep surviving when others don't. I turned to her, the guilt clawing up the back of my throat. Let them ask, I said, because I'm done pretending I know how this ends. Later that night, I walked the ship alone, past the bunks of the dead, past the medbay with the burned. I stopped outside Keener's quarters. Inside was silence. A bunk, a few photos. One of him with his brother, also dead now. Another of him, younger, in cadet uniform, proud, before he ever met me. I sat down, just stared at the floor. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even guilt. It was fatigue, bone deep, the kind you don't shake off with a drink or a scream. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of turning into Ashran before I got the chance. When I returned to the bridge, Ren was waiting with news. Not all bad. Narek survived, badly wounded, one eye gone. Part of his jaw melted from plasma heat, but alive. His ship, the Black Mare, had limped through a warp gate and dropped signal, but he'd sent a fragment of data before vanishing. Coordinates, one final shot. High Command was planning a summit, something public, a peace conference to restore galactic stability. All a lie. A media stunt to legitimize Ashran's grip on power. They would televise it across the stars. One fleet, one commander, one empire. It would be our last chance to strike, one shot to burn the lie down in front of the entire galaxy. Ren looked at me. We'll never get close without help. I don't want help, I said. She frowned. What then? I want fire. There's a level of desperation where rules don't matter anymore. That's where we were now. I stared at the decrypted coordinates blinking across the Obsidian Hammer's forward display. The location of the upcoming Unity Summit. 1 month from now. One fleet to guard it. Hundreds of officials in orbit around a neutral moon called Valis 1. The event would be broadcast live to more than 70 planetary systems. It wasn't a summit. It was coronation by propaganda. Ashran wasn't just securing military power. He was rewriting the story, making himself the hero, the man who unified humanity during crisis, who brought the warring colonies to heel under one glorious banner. He was going to become the symbol, and once he did, the war would become religion, so I had to burn him alive before he ever got that spotlight. But I didn't have a fleet, not anymore. After Bellatrix, the Ashwake was scattered. Narek was hiding in deep drift space with half a jaw and a quarter of his sanity left. My own crew was barely holding together. Supplies were running low. Morale was worse. Ren and I hadn't spoken in almost 2 days. Every room I entered now, I felt it. They were wondering if I'd lost the fight in me. I hadn't. I just buried it under something colder. We needed ships, weapons, access. And to get all 3, I had to do the one thing I swore I'd never do: go to the syndicates. The criminal underbelly of human space didn't run on trust. It ran on fear, leverage, and untraceable credits. The Sable Ring controlled the Western Rim, a massive pirate coalition that dealt in blood, tech, and black market AI. Most of them hated High Command, but that didn't mean they liked me. My name still echoed through channels. Half legend, half bounty target. Ren warned me not to go. You walk into that pit, Ren. You'll come out with a dozen new enemies and no soul. I looked at her and said, I lost my soul when I let Keener die in that station. She didn't argue after that. We docked at Forge Haven, a rotating weapons platform retrofitted into a pirate fortress, hidden inside a magnetic storm field. The Ring's ambassador, a smug bastard named Torgal, met me with a dozen guards and a smile carved out of old scars. Commander Maddox, he said, stretching the title like an insult. I thought you'd be dead by now. Ashran usually ties off his loose ends tighter. I didn't humor him. I'm not here to reminisce. No, he said. You're here to beg. His smile widened. That's new. We met in the underchamber, a room lined with stolen tech and armed thugs. Ren stood behind me, silent, watching. I laid it out. The summit, the trap, the target. Torgal sipped his drink and chuckled. You want me to risk the Ring, our ships, our lives, to crash a political parade guarded by every fleet dog Ashran has? Yes. And what do I get in return? You get to break the leash, I said. You get to be the man who humiliated High Command in front of the entire galaxy. He raised an eyebrow. I leaned in. And I give you the files. What files? The ones Ashran doesn't want anyone to see. The ones that prove he assassinated 3 syndicate leaders during the Red Fang Cull and blamed it on rival crews. The ones that sparked the civil war in your Ring. His face darkened. Ren handed over a shard drive. He stared at it for a long moment, said nothing. Then snapped his fingers. His guards lowered their weapons. We'll give you 4 ships, he said. No more, and you do all the dying. I nodded. It was enough. Back on the Hammer, we began prepping for the assault. This wouldn't be a full-scale engagement. That was suicide. This would be surgical, focused. The Sable Ring ships would jam orbital comms and act as a distraction. Meanwhile, I would lead a stealth insertion team down to the summit's hosting station on Valis 1. The goal wasn't just to kill Ashran. It was to do it live. On air. With the whole of humanity watching. Ren hated it. This isn't justice anymore, she snapped, cornering me in the command briefing room. It's spectacle. You're turning into what you swore you'd fight. No, I said. I'm just giving people the only thing they'll pay attention to anymore. Her voice dropped. A public execution? I didn't flinch. He made the truth a weapon. I'm going to fire it right back at him. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw it in her eyes. The line between loyalty and disgust. She didn't walk away, but she didn't follow me out either. The night before the mission, I called what remained of the senior officers into the mess hall. 12 of them. Half bruised, all tired. I stood in front of them. No speeches, no rank, no pretending. I can't promise survival, I said. I can't promise we'll win. I looked at each one. But I can promise you this. If we succeed, they'll never be able to lie again without someone remembering us. No one clapped. No one cheered, but no one left the room. We jumped into the Valise system under full stealth. The Sable Ring's decoy ships emerged 3 clicks from the summit zone, broadcasting garbled distress signals. As expected, Ashran's fleet moved to intercept, not realizing it was a distraction. Meanwhile, the Obsidian Hammer, stripped of all non-essential heat signatures, slipped into low orbit under the dark side of the moon. Our team launched in stealth pods. 4 total. 8 soldiers. Me, Ren, and 2 Ashwake volunteers who had nothing left to lose. The summit was already underway. Dozens of delegates moving through glittering halls under security drones and media feeds. The main speech would happen at Oro 200 Galactic Standard Time. We had 1 hour. We breached through a maintenance shaft buried under the west wing. No alarms, no chatter. Ren jammed the sensors with an old encryption virus stolen from a syndicate vault. We moved fast, clearing hallways, silencing guards, sticking to shadows. It wasn't until we reached the broadcasting chamber that I saw him. Ashran, standing behind a podium, rehearsing his speech, flanked by 2 elite guards, smiling. Perfect. He looked more like a savior than a butcher. I gritted my teeth. Ren placed a hand on my shoulder. "One shot," she said. "No mistakes." I nodded. We set up our broadcast patch, overriding the summit's signal relay, 40 seconds before the cameras went live. Ashran was finishing his lines when the countdown triggered. A new dawn, forged through unity, sacrifice. I stepped out of the shadow and raised my weapon. He froze. So did the room. Gasps, shouts, security drones rising. Too late. We were already live. I spoke into the camera. "This man is not your hero." Ashran stared at me, eyes wide. "Ren, you don't know what you're doing." "No," I cut him off. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I broadcast everything. The files, the betrayals, the ceasefire lies, the political killings, the setup at Bellatrix, Keener's death, the internal leaks, the ambition, all of it." And then I said the line that ended it. "This isn't treason. This is reclamation." Ashran drew his sidearm. I shot first. One clean shot through his chest. He collapsed against the podium, blood running down his perfect uniform. The room descended into chaos. Alarms screamed. Delegates ran. But it didn't matter. The galaxy had already seen, and the lie had died. Live. The shot echoed longer than it should have. Not through the hall. The sound was gone in seconds, swallowed by the clamor of guards and fleeing delegates. But in the broadcast, the sound of the gun, the crack of that one fatal truth, it kept playing. Over and over, across every colony, every fleet, every screen in orbit. One bullet, one collapse, one man down. And just like that, the myth of Ashran shattered. But his death didn't bring silence. It triggered the storm. We barely made it out of the summit station alive. The guards didn't wait for authorization. They fired on sight, screaming about treason and sacrilege. The 2 Ashwyk soldiers died in the first corridor. One burned alive by a drone flare, the other shot in the spine trying to cover us. Ren and I ran through fire and metal, ducking falling ceiling panels and flashbangs, dragging what was left of the broadcast gear with us. It didn't matter that the truth was already out. We needed to survive long enough to make sure no one buried it. The Hammer's stealth pods picked us up just outside the atmospheric barrier. We were half-conscious by the time we were pulled into orbit, battered, burned, bloodied, but alive, somehow. Barely. The moment we jumped to safety, the Obsidian Hammer's bridge became a war council. No celebration, just questions. Who's going to fill the power vacuum? What about the retaliation fleets? What happens now? And the worst one, asked by Ren, her voice stripped down to its raw core. Did we just make everything worse? I couldn't answer, because I didn't know. Reports started flooding in from every direction. The summit station descended into civil chaos. With Ashran dead, rival admirals fought to seize control of the fleets. Delegates accused each other of collusion, sedition, betrayal. The Unity Treaty was dead before it ever launched. 3 major colonies declared independence the same day. 2 others went dark entirely. On Earth, riots exploded across the equatorial ring. Protesters took to the streets with signs that read, "Maddox was right," while others shouted back, "Traitor! Assassin!" I became a symbol overnight. To some, I was a liberator. To others, a terrorist. Both were wrong. I wasn't trying to save humanity. I just wanted to make it stop lying to itself. Inside the hammer, I felt the shift almost immediately. Before, there was fear. Now, there was belief. But belief is dangerous. It gives people something to fight for, and die for. And sometimes, they stop caring about why they're dying. They just want blood. Ren caught me in the mess hall 2 days after the assassination. Her face was gaunt, exhausted. "You need to speak to them," she said. I kept my eyes on my tray. "There's nothing left to say. You started something bigger than you, bigger than all of us. Right now they think you're a prophet." I laughed, bitter and low. "I'm just a soldier who got sick of taking orders." "That's not how they see you." She leaned in. "And that's a problem." I gave a speech that night. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. I stood on the bridge, cameras recording, as every loyal ship we had left tuned in. The Ashwake, the Broken Fleets, the Independents, even some ex-commanders from former Earth factions. I didn't give them hope, I gave them truth. "This isn't a rebellion," I said. "It's a reckoning." I didn't kill Ashran for glory. I did it because no one else had the guts to call the system what it really is. Broken, rotten, built on blood. I paused. I won't lead an empire. I won't wear a crown. But I will drag every lie into the light until there's nothing left for them to hide behind. I looked directly into the lens. And if that makes me the enemy, I let it hang. Then you finally understand what it means to be human. The transmission went viral, across back channels, civilian forums, rebel lines, even leaked into enemy species broadcasts. Humanity was tearing itself in two. But that wasn't the worst of it. 3 days later, an anonymous fleet sent us a message, encrypted. Short, only 3 words. "We're coming home." At first, we thought it was a loyalist unit, maybe a splinter cell defecting, but the coordinates pinged from outside the galactic rim. Deep space. Then Ren decrypted the second layer, and everything changed. The message wasn't from humans, it was from the Crixians, the same species we'd slaughtered under Ashran's orders, the same ones we were told had been crippled, divided, broken. They weren't. They'd just been watching. And now they saw the weakness in our chain. The broadcast had shown them our greatest vulnerability. We weren't united. We were bleeding, and they wanted to finish the job. Back in the command chamber, I stared at the feed as the Crixian ships began mobilizing from the edge of the Perseus Rift. It wasn't just a few scouts. It was a war fleet, not just to retaliate, to conquer, to erase us for what we'd done. Ren stood beside me. "We tore off the mask," she said, "and now the whole world sees the scars." I didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Only one thing left to do. I used to think the hardest part of war was the killing. It's not. It's the waiting. The quiet before a fleet drops out of warp. The stillness before the first shell hits your hull. That's the part that eats you alive. Because in that silence, all the ghosts talk louder, and I had more ghosts than crew at this point. The Crixians weren't sending a warning shot. They were sending extinction. 300 ships, 70 heavy carriers, dozens of razors, siege-class monstrosities wrapped in plasma armor and powered by dark matter cores. They came from the black, like a wave of vengeance. I sat in the command chair of the obsidian hammer, watching the feed as they moved in from the Perseus Rift. Silent, steady, determined. "ETA?" I asked. Ren, standing at the tactical console, barely glanced up. 27 hours. That was it. 27 hours before humanity got what it deserved. I called a summit of my own. Not in a marble hall, not on a peace moon, but in a warship. No security drones, no speeches, just leaders, or whatever was left of them. Narek joined. His voice filtered through a scrambled link. He was recovering from surgery, part of his lower face replaced with synth bone. Still mean. Still angry. 2 former Earthfleet admirals tuned in too. They'd gone dark after the assassination, too afraid to act, too proud to ask for help. Now they had no choice. Even the Sable Ring showed up. Torgal, smug as ever, sipping something probably illegal out of a metal flask. And I laid it out. Not politics, not strategy, just truth. "They're coming to finish what we started," I said. "We kicked the hornet's nest. Now the swarm is coming." Narek grunted. "Then we better light the fire." One of the Earthfleet commanders, a gray-haired woman with death in her eyes, frowned. "You expect us to follow a traitor?" I stared at her. "No," I said. "I expect you to fight for the species, or die watching it vanish." She didn't argue again. We had 27 hours. We used everyone. The Ashwake returned, tattered, broken, but burning with purpose. Civilian freighters were repurposed into makeshift bombers. The Sable Ring brought shield disruptors and Javelin-class cannons stolen from the Crixians years ago. Even the old Mars Claw fleet, long thought dismantled, answered our signal. 10 ancient cruisers, undergunned and barely spaceworthy but flying proud. The broken came together. Not because of me, because they had no one else. On the 27th hour, we saw the Crixian fleet tear through the last relay beacon in the Trivax corridor. The explosion lit up half a system. The war had begun. I stood on the Hammer's bridge. The old battle armor clung to me like a second skin, heavy, dented, patched with burn marks. I hadn't worn it since before Ashran betrayed us, since before I started caring about being human again. Ren stood beside me. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "You ready to be the monster again?" I looked at her. "No," I said. "But I'll do it anyway." The Crixians didn't wait. They warped in formation, a wall of fire and black steel. The first salvo vaporized 2 civilian cruisers. No warning, no opening messages. Just death. The retaliation was immediate. Narek's ships flanked left, dropping pulse bombs that tore through the Crixian spearhead. The Sable Ring struck from the asteroid shadows, launching disruptor torpedoes that turned half a dozen enemy scouts into slag. But it wasn't enough. They were bigger, stronger, smarter. They adapted fast, too fast. By the 3rd hour, we'd lost a third of our fleet. On the Hammer, we took direct hits twice, one to the port reactor, one to the rear turrets. We held the line. I personally oversaw the counterstrikes, giving no room for doubt, no time for fear. Every order I gave sent someone into hell. But hell was the only chance we had left. In the 5th hour, the tide shifted. Barely. An old Mars Claw cruiser, the Argent Vow, executed a suicide run into a Crixian dreadnought, cracking its core and lighting the sky with blue flame. The shockwave disabled a second ship behind it. That was the moment. The sliver of hope. We exploited it. I called every surviving ship to focus fire on the left flank. No mercy, no delays. They followed, not because I was commander, because I was the one still standing, still fighting. By the 8th hour, half the Crixian fleet was gone, but so were we. The Sable Ring was down to 2 ships. Narek's Black Mare had lost main comms and was venting air. The Hammer was barely flying. Half our systems were running on backup power. Fires burned in 3 lower decks. I hadn't slept in 2 days. And then they broke through. One of their carriers, massive, burning, but intact, made it past the front lines, straight toward Earth. It would reach orbit within the hour, and there was no one left to stop it. No ships, no missiles, no miracle. Just one option. I stood in the corridor outside the Hammer's reactor core. The failsafe key was already in my hand. Wren met me there. She knew. "I should do it," she said. "No," I replied. She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen since this all began. Fear. Not of death, of loss. "You pull that switch," she whispered, "and you become the very end of your story." I smiled, tired and broken. "I already did, Wren, the moment I started this." She didn't try to stop me. She just placed her hand over mine and nodded. The obsidian hammer jumped, straight into the path of the carrier. No shields, no weapons, just momentum, and a detonator. I broadcast one last message to the fleet, to the galaxy. "This is Commander Wren Maddox. I've done terrible things, some in anger, some in grief, some because I believed there was no other choice. But if there's anything left of us worth saving, this is the price." The hammer collided with the carrier head-on, and I pulled the trigger. The explosion shattered the sky. Both ships disintegrated in a wave of fire and gravity collapse. The carrier's core ruptured. Its fleet panicked, scattered, retreated. It was over. Not because we won, but because we gave them something to fear again. They called it the last hammer, the strike that ended the battle. That forced the Crixians to back off and reconsider. It didn't bring peace, but it gave us space to breathe, to rebuild, to question. Wren survived. She made sure the message kept circulating. Truth didn't die with me. It burned brighter. Some say I was a traitor, others a martyr. Neither is right. I was just a man who'd had enough. A man who chose not to let monsters win, even if it meant becoming one myself.